Hey there, I'm Rusty Noakes, Coach Rusty Noakes, and I'm a certified addiction recovery coach, certified abuse recovery coach, and I help successful driven Christian men from crummy childhoods who are addicted to pornography and other unwanted sexual behaviors achieve purity is the new sexy by helping them heal from the trauma and the wounds that are driving them to act out in the first place.
Right, and I'm Amy Noakes. I'm a betrayal, trauma, and grief coach, helping women navigate the life of a betrayed spouse. I'm also LCDCI certified, helping people with chemical dependency. And this is episode 9 if you're listening on YouTube, our YouTube channel. And what is this one about?
Freedom.
Freedom, yeah, that's
We meant
right.
to do this one back on Independence Day,
Yeah.
and we've kind of had a couple of weeks of not doing any YouTubes.
Right.
As you can see, our background's a little different, so we're kind of on a working vacation. We're here in Arkansas at my mother-in-law's house, her mama's. We're in Malvern, a little spot in the road, and I'm from Searcy, about 2 hours north of here. So we're seeing family. Right now we're just sitting outside in the backyard under I call it a gazebo, but her mama calls it a lanai.
Oh, whatever.
Whatever.
It's not a lanai if you're in Malvern, Arkansas, just saying.
And it looks like I'm wearing really dark sunglasses, but I'm not.
But
These
you're
are
not.
These are just my prescription glasses, but they
Hey,
tint
well,
when I'm outside.
And the sun came out. The
Yeah.
sun wasn't out, and we've had a lot of storms.
We almost
so-
built an ark, but the sun came.
Right?
So yeah, we were going to do an episode about freedom back on July 4th for Independence Day. So we're behind, so we're just going to do it now. And the whole thing about freedom, you know, we just got to thinking about this country and when we got our independence and our freedom and how our founding fathers had to fight for that freedom.
Right.
And freedom is always worth fighting for. And I was also kind of thinking about how when I was in addiction, that was anything but freedom.
Right.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was like being in bondage. It was like being a slave, and there was no freedom. I would act out with these addictions to medicate pain, to cope with stress, anxiety, anger, whatever. And it did bring relief, but it was a prison cell in and of itself because that was my coping mechanism.
Right.
And I couldn't do it or wasn't doing it in healthy ways. And now that I'm, you know, in recovery and sober-minded and all that good stuff, you know, I look back and I think about just how much bondage I was in and how awful that was. And, you know, I don't know for the life of me why I waited so long to get free. Because the great thing about it is that you can get free anytime you want to. And maybe I didn't really consider myself to be in bondage. I mean, I didn't like my addictions,
It's all you knew.
I suppose.
You know, and maybe knew how to handle it or cope, I guess. I'm not
Yeah.
going to say it's all you knew, but...
Right. And it's just, you know, it's confronting whenever you know you're going to have to put your pacifier down like a little baby. And, you know, babies want their passy. And then when they don't have their passy, they cry. And then they got to find some other way of coping. And they got to learn how to grow up and live without a passy.
Right.
So, you know, it just got me thinking about all that. And I really hope that, you know, through anybody that watches these YouTubes and starts to think about that they'll be like, you know what? They'll realize that if they're in addiction, just what kind of bondage and slavery they're in. The Bible talks about being a slave to Christ.
Right.
And that's an awesome form of slavery. I know it's kind of a weird word, but like he is the most benevolent master.
Right.
It's not like
Right.
you're in slavery to some authoritative dictator, you know, that's not emotionally involved or caring. I mean, it's like you've got this master who is benevolent and has your best interest in mind and guides you to green pastures. And so it's like a choice, though. It's a choice. What the heck are you doing?
I'm going to give them a scripture, Galatians 2:20.
Gotcha. All right. I thought you were losing our podcast.
No, Galatians 2:20 talks about what you're talking about, bondservant for Christ. And what I find interesting is that, you were saying he's benevolent and, he's not this, horrible master that we think of. When we think of the word slavery, we think of something very negative. And yet throughout the Bible, we see where God addresses slavery and addresses slave owners. And he doesn't say anything about they're not being slavery, but he does address how people are to be treated, whether they are slaves or free, or they're women, or they're men, or they're children. He talks about how human beings should be treated. And what I find interesting about the word bondservant is that a bondservant is a servant that is a slave that chose to remain with their master after they were set free. And it's something about, and I need to look this up, so forgive me for not having all the correct information, but there's something about the ear. They would pierce their ear, I believe, to show, and something about, I'm going to need to look this up and maybe put it in the comments. But there's something about how they would pierce their ear or do something to show the significance of their choice. And kind of like how we wear wedding rings, it shows the significance of our choice. And marriage is not slavery, but, we are serving one another. And so this servanthood is almost like, slavery in a sense that we choose to serve, but we serve someone who is benevolent and someone who is never going to hurt us and someone who is always going to be there for us and someone who takes care of us and is looking out for us and guiding us and leading us. It's not someone who's going to beat us and into submission.
Did you know that the best form of government would be a benevolent dictatorship? We have freedoms, but at the same time, we don't know how to handle our freedoms. And if you just look around, like we use our freedoms and exploit it and do the stupidest, most heinous things.
Right.
But, don't let the word dictator frighten you, but when it's a benevolent dictatorship, when that dictator has our best interest in mind and has the wisdom to guide us with that, that's the absolute best form of government. And that's kind of what we put ourselves under when we were bondservants to Christ. Now, here's the thing about freedom when it comes to like our founding fathers, and they had to fight for for their freedom. And I had to fight for my freedom. I chose to get into recovery, and I chose to choose a different lifestyle, but I had to fight for it. It's not something that you can just wish for and hope for, or complain enough about how your master, is mistreating you or how awful it is. You've got to take action and you've got to fight for it. And it's a fight worth having, though.
Right.
Maybe that's what kept me from doing it. Maybe that's part of why it kept me from doing it for so long.
Were you afraid of the fight?
Possibly. I know I was to some extent because I knew it was going to suck. I knew it was going to be hard.
Right.
I knew I would have withdrawals. I knew I would have the itchies and the want-tos and the who knows what, irritability and aggravation, or just what am I going to do? How am I going to cope? What am I going to have to learn? And how am I going to live without it?
And what are you going to lose? Maybe focusing on the loss instead of the gain.
But, if I were sitting in a literal prison cell with no freedom, and I've been in jail, and it's the most awful, stupidest feeling because you're just sitting there and you can't do anything that you want to do.
Wow.
I mean, you are at the mercy of everybody else on the other side of those bars. You need them for food. You need them to go to the bathroom. You need them for everything.
Wow.
And you've got no freedom. And it sucks. And when you're sitting there, you want out so bad. You want out so bad. And you just have all these thoughts like, how am I going to do it differently? How am I going to avoid getting back here? I don't want to do this again.
Did you have those thoughts in, your addiction prison? Like, I want out, I want out, I want out. How am I going to get out? Were you thinking that way, or did that happen? Did that come later?
It came later because
So
it
you
started
weren't always thinking that.
because
Did
it
you even
started so
realize?
young. It's like the boiling frog. It's just the water got hotter and hotter and hotter, and then by the time I was really in that, it's kind of like guys that have been in prison for 20, 30 years. That's their life. They just learn to deal with it and live with it. They've accepted it.
Did you realize you were even in a kind of prison with
Not
the
really,
addiction?
no. And
So
that's
you
kind of
just
why
didn't
I
know.
wanted to talk about it today on like this because I was a slave to that addiction. I would do what it said to do. It's like having a bully in your head, and these thoughts start to come up, and even without a trigger, just out of repetition, just out of habit.
Sure.
That bully in the head starts to talk, and
Right.
you try to shut him up, but he just talks louder, and just it won't go away, it won't go away, it won't go away. Then you start to justify, then you finally do it, then you feel like crap.
That's a prison in and of itself.
Yeah. So, now that I'm out of it, it's like, if you get out of jail, out of prison after being in there for a long time, it's like, holy cow. I mean, the sky looks bluer. You just want to go for walks in the park. You want to appreciate this freedom that you've got. And it's amazing, and it's so much fun. But you know what? It's a fight worth fighting. And if you've not thought about it, if you're in addiction, you're in a prison cell. And if you want out, you can break out. I've got the keys. I've got a keychain full of keys that you just start unlocking these doors, and everything you come to, you just unlock that door, and next thing you know, you're out of the prison.
Right.
Now the devil has gate guards, just like a prison has guards, that they don't want you breaking out, and they're going to get in your way. They're going to point their guns at you. They're going to fire at you. They're going to jump on you. They're going to tackle you. They're going to try to do everything they can to keep you in that prison. But if you're willing to fight for your freedom and stop living a life of oppression, I mean, who wants to live a life of oppression where you obey this bully that's making you do these stupid, hurtful, harmful, damaging things, not only to yourself but others around? I mean, who wants that?
Well,
I don't think anybody really
but-
wants it. I didn't want
Yeah.
it, but I was in it.
Yeah, and you didn't know you were for a while too. So this could be helpful to some people that maybe not even realize they're in a prison. That this is one, and this is what it looks like, and then this is what it looks like to be free.
Yeah. So, I think we can kind of start to land it unless you've got something else you want to...
I do want to approach the other side of it, the woman's side. We have to fight too, and it's in a different way. And
that's a good point.
The Bible also tells us, God, we don't fight the way the world fights. And I had to learn that. There's so many times I thought, I've been in the world of psychology for a long time, and so I'd always try to approach it with, the psychological whatever, oh, have you thought this, or have you thought that, or well, how do you feel about this, or why would you do that, or, and none of it worked, because, well, obviously he didn't realize he was in a prison and needed to be free. He didn't realize he was hurting himself or me, and he just didn't understand, because I was fighting with the world's ways instead of God's ways. And so God tells us that we don't fight in the world's ways. We have to fight in prayer. We have to fight in going to Him. And so that's what I did. And in less than 6 months, he was free. So 30 years of bondage in prison and 6 months of fighting God's way, he was free. And that's pretty powerful. And I remember thinking, okay, Lord, every time I wanted to say something to him, I chose not to, and instead I chose to go to the Lord. And I went to the Lord and I would say, okay, God, you're going to have to do this. You have to do this. And I would say, this is what I see. This is what I want for him. This is my request. And it would be no time and it would happen. And so I tried again and again and again. And pretty soon it just snowballed, and he was on his own with the Lord and doing his thing. So ladies, we got to fight too.
So on that note,
way.
The devil doesn't fight fair.
No.
And when you're in a fight, and I've been in some of those too, when you're in a fight, I mean, you do whatever it stinking takes to not lose that fight. Because sometimes losing that fight can mean losing your life. And you will bite, kick, scratch, poke at eyes. You'll do everything you can to win that fight. And that's the mentality you've got to have when you're going to fight this fight. You've got to be willing to do whatever it takes. And if you're willing to do whatever it takes, you can absolutely do it. As far as your fight, you know, prayer and fighting those spiritual battles, absolutely. But at the same time, you've got to also have a plan for the physical side of things, because we are in the physical.
Right.
And that's where, like, one of your weapons of battle is boundaries. And that's where you kind of speak to the women, like, you know, have a boundary. If you want this, then you have to do this, because you're not getting this until you, you know, get into something, a group or whatever, start talking, a coach, whatever.
But I still went to the Lord for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not taking away from that part of it.
He just helped me with the boundaries and what I needed to do. I just, every little thought and question I had, I just kept going to the Lord about it.
And I'm glad you did.
Yeah, me too.
So, ladies, fight for your man. In love, set some boundaries. That can look like a whole bunch of different things. I mean, it can, it can, I don't know, well, what do you think about this? I might be wrong, but like sex, like, hey, if you want to have sex, then I need you to at least get in recovery. You may lapse or still bump your head while you're getting better, but until at least you're getting help, at least until you're in a group, have someone working with you. We don't be physical. I mean, is that too harsh?
Maybe after recovery has started, but more so than not, women are probably not having sex with their men right now anyways,
well,
because
we were.
They don't feel appreciated. But I know, but we have kind of a different.
And the guys I talk to, they're still having sex with their wives, but it's not like connecting. They feel like it's more like a duty, you know, it's not like they're really bonding, and it's not what it's designed to be, but they're still doing it just because they have physical needs, right? On both sides. But
it could be, it could be.
Well, I don't want to speak for women. I think if I was a woman, that'd be one of my boundaries. Like, dude, you want some of this? You got to start talking to somebody. That's a pretty strong boundary. But you've mentioned like separation and not divorce, and not for like super long periods of time, but maybe for a week or what are some other boundaries that a woman could put in place, like just to kind of not force her man to get help, but in a way kind of force his hand to like choose. You get to choose me, or you get to choose your addiction, and put him in a position to say, well, you know what, I really want you, so I'm willing to then seek out some help. What could a boundary look like? Sorry for putting you on the spot. No,
it's okay. You could go see a pastor. You could go see, and some of those are scary, I understand. Go see a therapist. You can say, okay, let's just go talk to a sex therapist. Let's just go talk to someone about relationships, marriage and family. Wherever you feel most comfortable and who you feel most comfortable with. Or
they could come talk to me. Dude, I totally gave you a layup. You could have just given me a plug right there, said come and talk to me.
Well, we're already doing that. But you're talking about where do they go to understand about certain boundaries. So, and I like the book Boundaries. I like the book Boundaries.
What does that look like? What do you mean?
Well, the book Boundaries.
The book Boundaries. Yeah. Right.
That has a lot of good ideas in it. But, and now that I'm where I wanted to go in the first place, but we've done all of that already for you guys. We've lived it, we've done it, and we've read the books, we've written the notes, we've created a program, especially for men, on how to go through all of that. And each situation, each couple is different. So it's hard to just say this boundary, that boundary, this boundary, that boundary. It's really, really tailored. So that's why it's good to have people like us to come alongside you and help you, in a team approach to navigate all of this.
Cool.
So.
Can we land it?
Yes.
Awesome. So guys, your marriage, your relationships with your wives, your kids, your life in general, your relationship with God, all of that is worth fighting for. And you know it without me even saying it. If you're wrapped up in sexual addiction, you're missing out. I'm not saying you don't have a relationship with God, and I'm not saying it's not good, but it's certainly not as good as it would be without this addiction in your life. And the life on this side of addiction, I promise you, it is so worth fighting for. And it's as simple as unlocking that. You are sitting in a prison cell with keys available to unlock that sucker and walk out. I've got those keys. I'm happy to
Right.
share them with you. And if you want to have that conversation and just see what that looks like, I will block out 2 hours on my calendar and have a breakthrough, absolutely life-changing coaching call with you, and we can get your problems handled. So you also work with the women on the betrayal trauma side. Ladies,
And
you
boundaries.
and boundaries. You ladies have a fight worth fighting for too.
Yes.
So anyway, freedom is worth fighting for. That's the bottom line. We love you guys. We'll put our links in the description. And until next time, God bless you. We look forward to hearing from you. Leave us some comments, by the way. Leave comments, like it, share it. It does matter. It helps us to reach more people. So if you're watching this, please just hit a like, hit a share, hit the bell so you get notifications. All of that helps us to get a little traction so that more and more people can see this message. And we're really out there trying to just save lives, save marriages, and make life better for people on this side of addiction. So help us out with that if you don't mind. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.